Can you hear me? Mic check. I think you can hear me. All right, let me know in the comments. We are going to jump right in Taurus and Scorpio in polarity because we have a very, very dynamic eclipse season that we are right in the middle of. So in the comments, let me know what kind of situations did you encounter during the first eclipse, which was sun and moon together, new moon, solar eclipse at 10 degrees of Taurus? What happened? Did you experience anything that was out of the ordinary, or because this eclipse, that first one was on the north node, it probably was more eventful, more of a surge of energy. Whenever the north node is involved, it has to do with bringing in a power surge or a dynamic flow of energy coming in. So just let me know in the comments what kind of experiences you had over the weekend. Today now is May 3rd, so we're just fresh off that weekend new moon eclipse. For me, I had a lot happen. This is happening. So you want to look at your chart and see the houses that you have in Taurus and Scorpio. Okay, so tomorrow I'm going to be talking about the next eclipse, and we'll look at the astrology of that next eclipse. We'll be more technical and focused on the degrees and all that stuff. I love to do that. And today, what I want to do is just really look at the mysteries of Taurus and Scorpio. So, Taurus and Scorpio are both fixed signs. What that means is that these are self-interested signs. They're showing us how to explore our own personal pleasure, power, relationship with natural beauty, abundance, resources, money, inherited money, earned money. Earned money is more on the Taurus end. Inherited money is more on the Scorpio end. So what this polarity is really about is the polarity between life, springtime, blooming flowers, fruiting trees, fruiting, just nature bestowing the fruits. And then on the other end of that, Scorpio, which is the opposite of Taurus. So whereas Taurus is spring and blooming, fruiting life, Scorpio is the autumnal equinox. So we just went through spring equinox. The Scorpio end has to do with the autumnal equinox. It's not the autumnal equinox, but because that equinox point is one of the cardinal directions, one of the cardinal signs, that's Libra. But right after Libra, we get into the fixed energy. So right after any solstice or equinox, those are all cardinal signs. Cardinal meaning that it is initiating, setting up, and building. And then the right after the cardinal comes fixed. Fixed means that after the cardinal has done the work of setting up the structure, initiating something, initiating us into something, what the fixed signs do, they bridge. They bridge the energy between cardinal and mutable. So in Scorpio, that bridge has to do with doing that deep inner work. It has to do with getting ready for winter. So, where Taurus is spring and new life, Scorpio is death and the dissolution. So, this is when we're doing our final work in the crops. We might be gathering the last little bits of food from the crops and doing, what do we call this? Chop and drop. Chop and drop is basically where you chop off the plants. You don't pull them by their roots, you just chop them, you let them die essentially onto the earth and let them become compost for the following crop. So, like that, Taurus in your chart is where you are beautiful, where you find pleasure, where you find your own beauty, your own yourself as a natural resource, where you're connected to natural resources, pleasure, abundance. This is Taurus. And it also has to do with a certain stability that can become stubborn. And then when we look over at that polarity with Scorpio, this has to do with death, endings, preparing for winter. And this can also include where we are obsessed, wanting to, because, like at the end of the growing cycle, we can get kind of greedy or like want to make sure those last little bits of harvest, we can have that kind of possessiveness of like making sure that that the self is taken care of. That some of those trends come up with Scorpio. Just have a little bit. I when I see Scorpio anywhere, in any house on the chart, there is a feeling of like, oh, this is where the person has a little bit of maybe possessiveness or being obsessive about something. And these are not bad things. This is what Scorpio is about. Scorpio has to do with going below the surface. Scorpio is ice in water in the form of ice, fixed water in the form of ice. So this is where we may be compelled to reach down into the depths of our own consciousness and want to take those last little bits. Something that's coming up right now has to do with maybe taking more than what we need immediately in the moment. And this is something that in our, oh, hello, Dustin. Thank you so much. This is something that maybe in our culture, we collectively are learning about. Where Taurus is completely just in the moment, there is a sense of like when it's springtime, when it's Taurus season, like right now, that depending on where you live, there is a place where there's food growing continuously. At least in this part of the world, at this time of year, it's easy to grow food. So there is a sense of less clinginess, trying to take. Taurus season, we have more of almost like an overindulgence. There's an overindulgence. There's an overabundance of food available to us for the most part. And then in Scorpio season, we see and we feel the dwindling down of access to food. The ground is cold, the sun is going down soon. the leaves are all falling off of the trees, and so there is a tendency to be more wanting to, the word that came up a lot at the end of April in that first eclipse was self-preservation. That's more of a Scorpio thing. Taurus has more of self-pleasure, and also just, more of the pleasure and overabundance and overindulgence that can happen with Taurus. So in Tantra Yoga, Taurus and Scorpio have to do with that principle of finding the right amount of pleasure and pain, where we can feel full potency of life in both of those experiences of pleasure and pain. So during this eclipse season, these topics will all be coming up. What I want to focus on right now is that Scorpio side, because this, I feel, is going to be more of a challenge going into the next 2 weeks. The Scorpio end of this has more of a clinging to the past. And because the upcoming eclipse, which I'll talk more in depth about that eclipse tomorrow, but that eclipse is on the South Node. The South Node has to do with the past patternings, conditionings, karmic, karmic pattern. And the moon is very close to the South Node. I believe that these are, I think they're like 1 degree apart. I think that the South Node will be at 24 and the moon will be at 25 degrees of Taurus. So they're pretty close. And because it's in, I think I just said Taurus, but it's in Scorpio. The South Node is on the Scorpio side. The North Node will be on the Taurus side. So this polarity is really going to be bringing up these Scorpio issues. If you've been following my channel, you will know that Scorpio in our culture is not very liked. It is not very exalted or put into a place of honor and respect. It's more put into the place of witches, shamans, mystics, sexuality, emotions, obsessive, compulsive, self-preservation. And we don't really like that so much, or it's not that we don't like it, it's that those things have been shunned through religion, through all of our upbringing in the systems that we came up in, whatever that system is. One instance is the saying, it's better to give than to receive. Well, Taurus, the whole point of Taurus is to receive, and that kind of gives us a feeling of not being in receivership, not even knowing how to receive. It's very amazing how many people, and I know this because talking about Venus, how many people think of Venus as a doer, as part of a doership, because for the most part, we are very disconnected from being able to receive. This creates a toxic environment for Taurus and Scorpio in our collective psyche. So I feel like during this eclipse cauldron or the eclipse season, some of these intense, difficult, challenging, they're only difficult and challenging because we have no training in how to work with our emotions, how to work with our desire body. That's a Scorpio part of life. We have no training in what to do with desire, with that energy of, when big energy starts moving in your body, either you're super angry and you want to fight, that is connected with Scorpio, or if you're super turned on and we don't know how to use that energy appropriately. So it gets convoluted and it gets very disruptive. And it's not that the energy itself is bad. It's just that we really have no idea, other than, as you age and mature, you have experiences and you practice and you learn in your own way. But there's nothing like taking a class and like somebody has experienced, has researched, has put it into a format for you. And then being able to get that information in a setting that's an educational setting. Okay, we need a Scorpio mystery school, like something that is just going to teach us how to work with Scorpio energy. Well, during this eclipse season, we're getting like the crash course, the test, and all the homework. So eclipse season is really like a homework phase of the moon cycle, where we don't really get a chance to set our intentions. We can, but really what happens during the eclipse season is that we just get a bunch of homework. Like things will come up that show us where we need to direct our attention. Okay, so what else I want to tell you about Scorpio and Taurus? Okay, so I mentioned with Taurus about learning to be in healthy receivership. Healthy receivership means that if you know the word Epicurean, something like that. Basically, this is where we are able to fully experience sensation, where we enjoy the finer things in life. And I mean that in a sensual way. So everything in life, from the fabrics, from the feel of the fabric, from the way things sound, there is an aesthetic that goes along with Taurus. It's very simple. Taurus itself is very simple. And simple in the way of, what do I need? This reminds me of that hierarchy of needs. Simple in the way that those needs are all there is. It's just food, water, shelter, love, pleasure, community. That's it. And maybe there's something else that I'm missing, but there's just a few basic needs. And Taurus is all about that. Taurus is the master of the simplicity of life. Feed me grapes. Let me be connected with the earth. Let me go to bed on time. Be hydrated. Eat healthy, delicious food. Have a good digestive system. And that will make a happy life for Taurus. Scorpio, on the other end, being that polar opposite, has to do with a complexity of life. The complexity. This is where I think about when cells divide. Okay, so imagine that the sperm and egg come together, and suddenly there's 1, 2, now there's 3. Now these cells just continually divide and just keep getting more and more complex. As they become more complex, little by little, organs are formed, tissue, the whole skin, nails, everything becomes out of that complexity. Like that, we have the capacity and the tendency to continually complicate or make complex our lives. Scorpio is the complexity, the depth of psychology, of our soul, of our emotions. Not a lot of training for us about emotions. Like, you will have to go out of your way, out of your educational system to learn. There's a lot of really good books out right now at this point in 2022 about psychology, the soul, a lot of Carl Jung's work, pretty much everything of Carl Jung's work. At the end of his life, he was a fabulous astrologer who gave us a lot of the archetypal astrology that we use. So that complexity is the realm of Scorpio. So, during the eclipse season, there is something happening that is asking us to release. And this, especially this next eclipse that's happening on the 16th of May, because it is with the South Node, asking us to allow this out, like an out, being able to take it out. The South Node is the North Node is a surge of energy. The South Node, when the eclipse is happening on the South Node, it is a power outage. And because it's in Scorpio, it's just like emotional complexity that will be brought up. I think the bringing it up happened with the first eclipse. And when Jupiter and Venus were in sextile, 60-degree alignment with Pluto, I think that was yesterday on May 2nd. That brought up a lot of issues in women's bodily autonomy. And that's a Pluto topic that got brought up on that day with that sextile between Pluto and Jupiter near Venus. So a lot of this stuff is starting to get stirred up. Today, the sun is 1 degree away from making an exact conjunction with Uranus. Uranus being that radical change agent, also known as the Great Awakener. Tomorrow, the sun and Uranus will be at the exact same degree, which is really just stirring up this eclipse cauldron. So if you think about the new moon and the full moon, I think about it like a cauldron. There's all the supporting planets and the antagonist planets who are, some are disruptors. That's when they're at 90-degree angles. Some of them, like right now, we do have a lot of supportive energy, trines, sextiles. I think of conjunctions as either going either way. They can either, depending on what the planet is, they can either be antagonistic or they can be supportive. So we have, from my perspective, we do have a lot of support going on during this eclipse cauldron. Tomorrow, with Sun and Uranus being at the same degree, it is like stirring that cauldron, stirring that eclipse cauldron, and really shaking things up. So interesting to see what happens tomorrow with that Sun conjunction to Uranus. I really just want to focus on Taurus and Scorpio here. I'm also, let's go just a little bit away from Taurus and Scorpio for just a minute, because I want to mention that Jupiter will be going into Aries on May 10th. And this really, I feel, is a really good opportunity because we just got through that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. Jupiter-Neptune in Pisces together will never happen again in our lifetime. Really has a lot to do with our capacity to revision, to dream into, to like have a new dream, have a new vision for our life and for life on the planet, for the way that we experience ourselves on the planet. And then as Jupiter moves on into Aries, it's like us being able to take that dream and make it, not make it real necessarily, but take the dream and get actional with it, like get it into the body and run with it. On the same day that Jupiter is moving into Aries, Mercury will be stationing retrograde. Mercury started the shadow phase, I would say it was around 25 degrees Taurus, if not 25 exactly, it was around 25 degrees Taurus, 25, 26. So look on your chart and see what do you have around those last degrees of Taurus. And then going into Gemini. This is the area of your chart where this Mercury retrograde, bringing things back, this could be really good. From the way I'm looking at the astrology, I know a lot of people don't really like Mercury retrograde, and they like to blame everything that went wrong on Mercury retrograde. I do it too. If I can't get my technology to work, I'm the first one to say like, oh, Mercury must be retrograde or something like that. But really, the truth about the Mercury retrograde is that we have the mental capacity to retrace our steps back to something that we had not completed, a thought that we hadn't completed. You know, like when you're talking and you forgot what you were going to say, or you lost your directional flow, and then when you remember, like, oh yeah, that's where we were, and then you can pick back up from where, that just feels so good. Mercury retrograde, especially in Gemini, well, between Taurus and Gemini being more a lot of ideas, a lots of connection, talking like brief little chats with people, talking just a few, what's the word when you say we're having what did I say? I can't remember the word for this. It's like not a deep conversation, but a small talk. Making those little small talk communications happen you don't have to make anything happen, but during this the onset of the retrograde, little small talks happening. When Mercury goes back into Taurus, all that small talk that you did can come down into the physical body and really make something amazing happen. And not saying something amazing can't happen while it's in Gemini, because doing all that small talk, quick, brief interactions can really lead to something big. The theme that I've been seeing with the recent Jupiter transits has to do with being in the right at the right time. You heard something, it sparked something, you went that direction, you met that person, whatever. I can give you an example. I was out at a property this weekend. I went to go check on the kids. I met a lady. She was really cool and interesting. When I went back to my van that night to go to sleep out on the side of a mountain, her property, I didn't know it was her property, but I was going to sleep thinking, man, that lady was so cool. I really want to be like her someday. And that just, she was really cool with the kids, like didn't try to force anything. They were doing stuff that my instincts were like, oh my God, I'm very like control-y with kids. Like, put that down, go this way, do that. Like, I don't want them to get hurt. And I'm very like, would try to direct their flow. And what she was doing was opposite to anything I had ever done, which was observing them and encouraging them and letting them do things that they weren't going to get hurt. They might have got hurt a little bit, but more, just more easy about it. When I went back to my van at night and I was going to sleep, I was like, oh, I would like that level of trust and that level of like not being worried and just trusting that what's happening is okay and I'm here and there's nothing I really need to do. That's the opposite of how I normally am. Normally I'm like feeling like I need to do things like I need to be in charge and like control and direct things. So the next morning when I woke up, here she is. She's like near my tent walking her dog, not my tent, near my van walking her dog. And we start up a conversation and I'm just, everything that she says, I'm like, you're amazing. Like you are me 2.0, like my next level of what I would wish myself to be or what I hope that I'm becoming, going towards in my life. And then I found out that she owned the property, that she had studied with a djembe teacher that my dad always talks about. And she basically, was doing my whole life dream, own a property, have retreats, teach people, have people live on the property that work there as a work trade. And And I'm like, wow. And we hit it off, and I loved her and she loved me. And we're like, hey, let's keep connected. Being in the right place at the right time, having those, what I have been lovingly calling a flirtatious liaison between planets, a flirtatious liaison that's happening today between Jupiter and Pluto are still doing that sextile 60-degree angle. That's where these two energies have a supportive, but it's very brief. It's light. It's not anything like, nothing big, but it feels good. And there's possibilities and potentials that come from those flirtatious liaisons. So I think that is good for now. Oh, let me just go back to the I did want to touch base a little bit on Taurus Scorpio. One more little thing about Taurus and Scorpio. So Taurus is the physical body in the sense of pleasure, like skin, sense-based relationships, even just that relationship we have with our own senses, the relationship that we have with food, with our, what I've been calling sense-based relationships with people. Like, who are you touching? Who are you letting touch you? As a massage therapist, I touch a lot of people. I'm very selective with who I let touch me. This is a part of the Taurus mystery. So, I have Taurus rising. So this is something that I'm learning to work with. So it also depends on where Taurus is on your chart. So that is going to be the area of life that's coming up for you during this eclipse season, and the way that you embody that energy will be different based on where it is on your chart, what planets that you have there. So Taurus, see, I'm like, oh, these are all the things I'm learning about, and it's not readily available to me. I know intellectually what Taurus is about. It really is about being the empress, being like the queen, the empress, who is strong in the physical body, maybe sturdy, maybe a little bigger, like fleshy. Fleshy is a Taurus word. Bodied, what my son says, big bodied, where there is ample amounts of flesh. Then we go over to Scorpio, and it's the opposite. Scorpio is like the aesthetic. Aesthetic? Ooh, I like that. Taurus is aesthetics, which has to do with like esthetician, aesthetics. Aesthetic. This is taking away. When you put the A in front of it, reminds me of the monks in India, or the Tibetan monks, where they're eating very little. They're just meditating all day and making sounds with their bodies. And they have renounced the things of the world. That is the Scorpio end. It's like kind of like being dead before you're actually dead, meaning removing the pleasures of life and just being energy, just connecting with that life force energy. Taurus, where we have this like sensuality, this builds life force energy. Taurus building life force energy, having to do with those sense-based relationships, using the physical body, using the senses. And then Scorpio, taking away the body and the pleasures and the needs of the body, and just focusing on the pure resonance of energy, the pure vibrational resonance of the energy. This is also starting to make me think about when we're reciting the seed syllables in Tantra Yoga. We do this thing where we'll like move the sound vibrations through our body, The body being Taurus, the sounds, the vibrational frequency being Scorpio. It's just the energy without the body. If you could separate those. We really can't separate them while we're alive, but if you could separate them, that's what that would be like. Well, during this eclipse season, we have to remedy, we have to bring these two together and find that sweet spot where can fully be both, fully in our pleasure body and fully in that the energy created from pleasure. Scorpio and Taurus, in that wheel of 6 axes that we have, 6 different relationship axes, or axes, I guess is the right word. Taurus and Scorpio have to do with Tantra yoga. And the finding that place where we can do both, where we can do both. So thank you so much for joining. Tomorrow, when I come on here, I'm going to have the chart of the next eclipse, which is, I believe it is May 16th. And we're going to be able to see this one. We'll be able to see this eclipse. It's really close to the south node, and it's visible in North America. If you're here, I think it's visible also in South America, and I think in Africa. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow, and we'll look at all the supporting planets and all the antagonists and just really dive into that. And then so tomorrow also, it'll be at 4 again. Bring your chart, bring your chart specific questions. So what I'm going to be doing is having you to type in, let me know what houses Taurus and Scorpio are for you. I'll give you a brief interpretation of what this eclipse could be working for you, and maybe some ideas of how you can engage with that energy healthfully. So rather than fighting the energy, how can you be in flow with that energy? All right. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to connecting with you again soon.